Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Pimba.
Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Rufai. How's everybody doing?
Doing great, thank you.
Good morning to viewers. Let me tell you what is happening around the world.
Waiting on your kingdom. They seem to have suddenly gone silent.
Well, you know, did you see there was a picture with one of the candidates and the president released on social media last week? I don't know if that's a tacit endorsement, but things have been quite quiet. Did you see that picture, Dr. Rubin?
Okay, please, we want an Awujale.
We do. We do. We're working on it. It's coming.
Hurry up.
It's coming. It's coming. You know, Salah is next month, so we should have some, hopefully, should have some development by then. Good morning to you, viewers. I hope you're also anticipating what's happening in Djibouti. Let me tell you what's happening around the world, nevertheless. Now, 2 Israeli strikes have hit Lebanon, and this is just hours after US President Donald Trump announced that Israel and Lebanon had agreed to a 3-week ceasefire extension. Now, the IDF, that's the Israeli Defense Forces, they fired several rockets. They say that several rockets, rather, were launched towards them, towards northern Israel, and that's why they had retaliated. Now, Trump, for his part, has previously stated that he does hope to host both the Israeli and the Lebanese leaders in the near future, and that is after both countries met in Washington on Thursday for talks. Hezbollah, notably, was not included in those discussions. Now, still talking about Trump, he says that he's under no pressure to end his war with Iran, though time is limited for Tehran. So he did release a longer post on Truth Social, but the crux of it was essentially, I have all the time in the world, but Iran doesn't. The clock is ticking, says the US president. Now, Trump has given orders to shoot and kill any Iranian boats placing sea mines in the Strait of Hormuz. That's as a 3rd US aircraft carrier has arrived in the Middle East. So the USS George H.W. Bush did join the USS Gerald R. Ford and the USS Abraham Lincoln in a massive buildup of American naval firepower. Let's take a listen to what Trump had to say.
I took it out militarily. Now all we're doing is sitting back and seeing what deal. And if they don't want to make a deal, then I'll finish it up militarily with the other 25% of the targets. We've hit 78% of the targets that we've wanted to hit. We've knocked out their manufacturing. We've knocked out their missile production. We've knocked out their drone production. We've knocked out everything. In some cases, when I say knocked it out, 70, 80, 90%. It's amazing what we've.
Well, Tehran says that talks will not resume until the blockade is lifted. So we'll have to see what happens there. Now, moving on now, because an active duty American soldier has been charged for placing a bet on the abduction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro using classified military information. Now, 38-year-old Gannon Van Dyke won more than $400,000 using Polymarket, and it's a prediction market platform. He used that platform 13 times, and it's believed that he used inside knowledge to bet on topics, including whether or not US forces would invade Venezuela and when Maduro would be removed from office. Now, if he is convicted, Van Dyke could be sentenced to around 30 years in prison. Now, moving on. The number of billionaires in the world could reach nearly 4,000 in the next 5 years. Very interesting reading. So as it stands now, there are around the world, in terms of the billionaires today, there are 3,110 billionaires around the world now globally. And this acceleration that we're seeing towards 4,000 billionaires around the world in the next 5 years is due to profits from technology, specifically artificial intelligence. Now, the number of billionaires is also expected to grow fastest in the different regions around the world. So you've got Saudi Arabia, their number is going to more than double from 23 billionaires in 2024 to to 65 in around 2031. And there's a similar situation in Poland, where it sees that its own population of billionaires will also more than double from 13 to 29. And then also in Scandinavia and Sweden, we are seeing a rise from 32 to 58 billionaires. This is an 81% rise. So it is quite significant to see that the world's population of billionaires are growing. And I'm sure my colleagues are among that number too. Speaking of the world, yes.
Zimbabwean dollars.
Well, speaking of the world's wealthiest people, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, the richest black man in the world, could be building another oil refinery in Tanzania. Let's take a listen.
I can give commitment to the two presidents that were here. If they will support the refinery, we'll build the identical one that we have in Nigeria, 650,000 barrels. There's nothing that can stop it. We have done the one in Nigeria, and that's why we are taking the bold move, which we have started already. Piling has started. We are building that one to a scale. 1.4 million barrels a day will give us will be the largest refinery in the world. That's number one. Number two, will have 10% of the entire United States of America's refining capacity.
Well, Dangote, he was speaking at an infrastructure financing summit over in Nairobi, which is the Kenyan capital. And there, as we saw, Kenyan and Ugandan presidents, William Ruto and Yoweri Museveni, expressed confidence that the venture would materialize, provided political backing is secured. And at the same time, at that same summit, CEO and president of the Africa Finance Corporation, Samaila Zubairu, has agreed that the Kenyan capital will be host for the AFC's regional offices. So indeed, a lot of development happening across the African continent. Now we're moving on now to our newspaper headlines. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day, and This Day does link our last World Brief story to the lead story, because This Day is leading on this news that Aliko Dangote is planning that major refinery project in East Africa, and he is of course targeting partnerships, as we've seen, with Kenya and Uganda. Now our picture headline to the bottom of the screen does show APC leaders in Ogun East endorsing Prince Dakwa Abiodun as the consensus candidate for the 2027 senatorial election. This happened at a caucus meeting, as I said, in Ijebu-Ode. Moving on to the Daily Independent, it is highlighting today the pressure on telecom operators. It's their lead story this morning, and there is some 65 billion naira spent monthly on diesel, they are complaining, due to unreliable power. And that's as the Nigerian Communication Commission did direct these telcos to compensate subscribers for poor service. The New Telegraph this morning says that the Nigeria's Governor Forum has unveiled a framework for state police, and this is as governors push for decentralized policing in order to tackle insecurity in their states. And we also see on the paper that the Delta State Governor, Sheriff Oborewori, is seeking European Union investment in Delta State's ports, transport and aquaculture sectors. So a lot of development coming over there. Next up, we do have The Guardian this morning, and it is highlighting the growing tension over the use of consensus candidacy ahead of 2027. This is, of course, bringing up concerns that it does weaken internal democracy. That's their lead story, and that's what they've dedicated their front page caricature to. The Guardian also sheds light, though, on concerns over the delayed special seats for women bill. It's just at the top of the paper, warning that that type of delay could undermine efforts to improve female representation in politics, especially ahead of 2027 elections. Now we're moving on to The Punch, and it does lead with the president saying that essentially he has rejected automatic tickets for APC lawmakers, handing governors the control of primaries and increasing essentially uncertainty for those seeking re-election. It also, this paper today, The Punch, adds that Nasir El-Rufai, the former Kaduna State governor, has pleaded not guilty to fresh charges, including alleged wiretapping, as a court denied him bail and fixed trial dates. And for our last domestic paper this morning, we do have the Daily Trust, which does note again that President Tinubu has sought Senate approval for a $516 million foreign loan for the Lagos-Sokoto super highway. Let's move on to The Guardian of the United Kingdom this morning, and it does give us this story that does feature the Foreign Office shutting a unit tracking potential breaches of international law by Israel in Gaza and Lebanon, and they've closed down that section due to cuts within the department. The I-Paper leads with this shooting kill. We mentioned this during the World Brief. It is splashing on Donald Trump's order to attack Iranian ships in the Strait of Hormuz as the struggle to control the waterway does continue. Well, those are your newspaper headlines and your World Brief. Love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, I mean, a couple of things. It just shows the kind of administration Trump runs, that soldiers that now have internal operation information and are using it to go bet on polling markets and make a lot of money. But the real scandal is we should investigate is what about those betting in Trump administration? There's been stories about them. We don't just have them out yet. Definitely will happen soon. Secondly, the story about Dangote Refinery, coming on stream or building something in Kenya, Uganda and the likes. Yes, good one. But like I keep saying, you put a caveat because you see, a lot of us talk from a point of optimism. We don't talk from a point of practicality and reality. That's why he put a caveat. He said, if everything aligns. How feasible is that? It's going to be a big problem. Currently, the oil they have even in the likes of Uganda and the likes, how many barrels are they producing per day now? Even their peak expectations, when is it going to happen? Have they gotten the investments to be able to bring the oil out of the ground? Because you have billions in your reserve does not mean the oil will jump out of the ground. Femi, to produce a barrel today in a green field, it's going to cost you a lot. In some brown fields already, to produce a barrel goes up to more than $20, $30 mark. It's very expensive in some climates, in some regions. Then you now put the investment down. You now start to make the market viable. We keep talking about DRC, mineral rich and the likes. Is it that easy? What about the security situation there? Since the likes of what's it called, Mobutu Sese Seko or Patrice Lumumba, that we all know that DRC has minerals, how have they been able to bring it out of the ground? Where is the investment? When you go to meet a bank, they are going to ask you for security risk. What is the risk threshold? I mean, these are factors we should put in. Yes, we are all excited, but we should also look at it holistically. We will see how well these countries will be able to meet those demands in the coming day, because these things are going to cost billions of dollars. Does Kenya have that money? Does Uganda, you will even have that money? Will, with Felix, with Tshisekedi still be there? Felix Tshisekedi, Etienne's son, still be there? How viable it is in those markets? Let's not to get excited about ourselves. I keep repeating, if not for Emefiele, that Dangote refinery standing there today will not stand. Do you know the concessions Emefiele had to make? So it's not a walk in the park. Let's stop getting too excited. Let's come back to Terra Firma.
All right. I think it's certainly not a walk in the park, and I don't think that was, the perception that anybody ever tried to put forward. But I love the fact that you referred back to sort of government concessions that were made for the refinery in Nigeria to materialize. And this is why he's speaking to these leaders, because he's saying he needs these countries to also be able to make similar concessions. If you listened to this talk by Yoweri Museveni, yes, he was saying that ultimately the issues are around regulations, internal regulations, which they're able to sit down and look at. There's how many countries coming together? So Kenya has now joined the project. You've got Tanzania, you've got Uganda already. It'll be stationed in Uganda, and DRC. And these are countries that are already running multi-billion-dollar extractive economies. What's happening? They're just shipping off their raw materials to the rest of the world. So I think it's, it would be unfair for us to also say that it's impossible for Africa to create a framework where we'll be able to add value and change this unfair global world order where Africa is always at the bottom of the food chain. Yes. And, you know, I guess if you aim for the moon, what do they say? Aim for the moon and at least you'll land among the stars. Yeah. So if they are not able to replicate the 650,000 barrel per day refinery, it will be important for East Africa to have its own refining capacity. Right. And they hope that once we bring all of the refining capacity on the continent together, we'll be able to do just about 10%. Just imagine 10% of what the United States does. But it's something in the journey towards energy security, which will strengthen our sovereignty. Oh my goodness, my time is up. But John Phelan, Navy Secretary, who was sacked, kind of gives you an idea of what's happening in the U.S. Navy right now. If they're sacking the secretary, all is certainly not well, especially with the naval blockade.
Our Niger wife from Odukpani local government area of Cross River State, you cannot be more correct.
I have to do my combi.
very simply, when the Dangote Refinery wanted to do the Nigerian refinery, everybody possible discouraged him. But he had the courage, he had the vision, he had, you know, the support to do it. As he did it in Nigeria, he's now saying we can also do it in Africa. And for Africa, it will be a win-win situation, in my own estimation. It's not about optimism, it's about a pattern and about the aspiration of not just Dangote himself, but an aspiration that I think that other African countries will do better to buy into. Now, that said, the Pope left Equatorial Guinea. By now, he should be back in Rome by way of update. And when he was leaving, he still stressed the point about peace, not war. He still stressed the point that leaders should avoid the politics of hate and division. And he had a photograph in the press conference that he had of a child in Lebanon who welcomed him when he visited Lebanon last year and said, "Oh, welcome Pope Leo." That boy is dead now. He had been killed in the latest onslaught of hostilities in that region. And he says that's not what the world wants. So on the whole of it, his trip has been successful, and the pontiff has been able to continue with his message of leadership, responsibility, and accountability, and also of a world that is committed to peace, not war. Now, Israel and Lebanon, President Trump says there's been an extension of 3 weeks of the ceasefire. But the issue is, of what effect would that have, as I keep saying? Now, Lebanon has no control over Hezbollah. Hezbollah continues to attack Israel. Israel says for every little attack, they will react. So there's that problem there. But this is also the sideline to the conflict in the Iranian war. And Iran is saying, contrary to what President Trump has said, they have what they call iron unity. So America sees it, Iranian vessels carrying oil in the Indian Ocean, they too seize 2 vessels elsewhere on the Strait of Hormuz. So the world is still in the state of uncertainty. Oil prices have gone up by 3%, whether it is Brent crude, the benchmark, or it is, what is it again? The WTI, which is the American one. Then the soldier, Ken Van Dyke. There have always been allegations that a lot of people within the Trump system were doing insider trading, either on Kashi or on the poly market. Now, this particular officer was said to have, placed bets of about $33,000 US on the poly market ahead of the seizure of Maduro and his wife. He gave the time, he gave the outcome, and now the Department of Justice has gone after him, and already they've charged him for violation of the Commodity Exchange Act, yes. 1 count of wire fraud, and also of engaging in unlawful financial transaction. Just to note that on the 24th of March, the White House issued a statement warning staff to desist from abuse of classified information. But those who have always said there is insider trading within Trump circle will say that they have been vindicated. The King of England and the Queen will be visiting the United States next week. And it looks like Trump is excited. He says the King, Charles III, is a fantastic man and that the visit will improve relations between both countries. Thank you very much.